Hello, cousins. Welcome to SASS Mass, our spirituality and support symposium. Think morning witchy chats around a campfire. The recording has started, and by participating in SASS, you agree to read and accept the terms of engagement, which we post in the chat. We ask that you mute during the recording for clarity during the meeting and for the afterplay. We will now get started with a few announcements.
Hello, I'm announcements. Well, we're busy with with the app. So we have a app for Bright and Dark through Heartbeat, and we are well underway from getting everyone into the app space, and we've been doing like a little testing, but it actually seems like everything's kind of going pretty smoothly like so far, and I'm sure we'll continue to get feedback, but yeah, so that's been pretty great. I'm really excited about it. I've been learning more about the app and all of its functionalities, and I'm really excited to like keep adding stuff and really, yeah, so that's super awesome. So basically what's kind of happening now is the guild members have arrived. All foundations members have received a link to come in. It was in a newsletter that just went out to foundations members on Friday, but the link is also posted in the members area. And we did that so they could plop right in and be in the foundations area. Um, and then probably like Monday, later Tuesday, where that's when we're going to start really posting it on social media. And Jemery will like start talking about it more during her lives. So what that means is that witches that follow us or hear about us and that are interested will come in to that courtyard space. So that space, right now it's all witches of Bright and Dark, but eventually there'll be witches coming in that are not part of the member space. They're just interested or they're looking for community. And so just to kind of note that that will be happening in the next couple of days. And so we're looking forward to that happening, and I'm interested to see what that will look like, how that experience will be. Um, yeah, so we're kind of just going with the flow as far as seeing what happens from here. But it's really, really, really exciting, a long time coming. And like eventually what will happen is members, so like say someone comes into the community and they're in the courtyard, they'll be able to sign up like through foundations directly in the app. So it's a little different from when all of us kind of signed out on the website, but nothing, if you've already been signed up on the website, that's just going to stay the same, and we're just going to monitor that like manually. Um, but that will kind of be the new flow. And then also what's really exciting is that Heartbeat will kind of keep track of like the longevity. Um, and of course, if you've been here a while, I have like, if you ever want to know the date that you started, I probably have it. But automatically after the year, the guild will like automatically open up. So that's another kind of cool feature. Um, so that's pretty much all that's happening for like the net, probably like for the month, is really just all about the app and getting that going. Of course, we have all our regular events. Today is Sacred Space. We have Sacred Space will actually start right after this meeting, and then there'll be the nighttime one, or nighttime for me anyways, but the 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern Sacred Space. And yeah, the workbooks are all in the app now, and all the meetings. I know some of y'all commented like you joined today's meeting right through the app, and that was really helpful. And then there's reminders, meeting reminders. So like today I got a alert for 1 hour. for this meeting, so that was super helpful. You can customize like your notifications. I like about the app too is you can change your name anytime in your profile. You can change it to whatever you want, and the change is immediate. So that is like another feature that is important to our group. So I think that's it for announcements. If anyone else has an announcement, or we can get right into it. I know I probably at some point will go off camera, so I am doing my pre-cleaning vacation ritual. So I'm going on vacation on Wednesday, so I'll probably use this as a little body doubling, which is really helpful. Karen.
Hey guys. Um, everyone, can I get started? Are we good? This is sort of an accomplishment about the month, but it's also specifically to Wit. She really helped me yesterday in sacred space. And I had built this whole like visualization, this whole dam of all this stuff. And I really acknowledged it yesterday and I really worked on it today. There is no more dam. It is gone. It was all fear. Um, there really wasn't anything of substance behind it. But the wall itself was really coming to accept who I am and that I'm my own person. I am not my mother's child, kind of thing, and feels really, really good and really good. And then the last piece of that is I've been thinking about changing my name. I'm not especially fond of Karen, not counting all the cultural stuff in the last few years. I've just never liked it. And I don't have an affinity to any of the last names in any of my lines. The marriage, my maiden name, my mother's maiden name, they all associated with people that weren't very nice. So I'm going to be starting the paperwork on Monday for Karina Evergreen. So very excited. And if anybody wants to weigh in, that's fine. If it's just a, but anyway, that's it. Thank you.
I felt very similarly when I wanted to change my name. I kind of had always known that my name wasn't like the name that I wanted. And so like I love that for you so much that you're starting this journey. And I think Karina is a beautiful name. Um
Thank
Karina
you.
Evergreen. Yes, I think that's beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Oh, wait, I'm so sorry to draw attention to you, but like you did it yourself. You look so gorgeous. Hi. Oh my gosh, your makeup is just gorgeous today. Sorry. Totally caught my attention. So that's probably what it's for though. So amazing. I know, I'm sorry, I'm so ADHD. It shows. Oh, but I wanted to say about the name change. That's like feels I was literally just sending a meme to another witch this morning about how um like being trans and being a witch is like really similar because like you end up changing your name and then you do like weird stuff that your parents don't understand and like um it's just kind of messing with the fabric of reality by doing the internal work. And so I just think it's really cool that you started on that journey and I just wanted to say congratulations.
Yeah, feel free to start using it in our space, like whenever you feel ready to do so. You can change your profile name anytime in Heartbeat, so we can start using that when you feel ready. No legal requirements to change your name in the witch worlds. You can do that whenever you want.
I actually would kind of love to see how everybody's new moon has gone. Mine, for once, has been very quiet. So that kind of makes me nervous in some ways. But yeah, I'd love to hear how everybody else is doing and how they're going forward with this new moon. Go ahead, Stephanie.
I just wanted to share something I did this morning. Speaking of new moon, there is, I've spoken about her before, a woman locally um, that is trying to do more community stuff. She's of the Lori, it's a Cabot, right? From the Salem, the witchcraft. Anyway, very traditional. That's her tradition. And she did a new moon in Cancer ritual this morning that I went to. So she times all of her rituals and spell work and stuff like very closely connected to the stars, which is something that I'm not astrology. I'm not like super informed on at this point. So that part is interesting for me to learn from her. And so her take on this particular new moon in Cancer was that it was a really good time to do manifestation in home and relationship goals. And so, we did some spell jars and things like that. And it was just kind of nice to get together with a bunch of people who had the same interests. I certainly don't align with a lot of it's still, once you've been practicing in a connection based magic for a while, when you're working with others who do not practice that way and practice in more of a control based, it's a little shocking to the system. So I struggled in those things. But other than that, the community was nice. And so um, I learned a little bit about astrology and what this particular new moon meant. And that's all I have to share about it. That's what I did for this new moon. I wasn't paying attention, and my thing shows me that Wit is up next. Is that correct? No,
Jenny Lee is.
that's it on my list.
You're okay.
Oh, is it me? Okay. This new moon has felt very chaotic to me. I've been not unhappy, I just feel like I'm just like this much out of control. Like I can't quite grab a hold of anything. So that's been kind of weird. And I don't know if it's the new moon for sure or if it's just me. And the weather has been kind of weird here in Missouri, so that may be part of it too. But yeah, I just have felt kind of off, um, off my game a little. Um, like, like I just can't grasp that things are just slightly out of my reach. So that's kind of the way I've been doing it. Just not unhappy. Like I said, it's not bad. It's just a little irritating sometimes. I want to go, bam, make it, come here, or wiggle my nose. I have said that more in the last 2 weeks. I wish I could just twitch my nose and do blank whatever. than I have in my entire life. I have been very bewitched in my way of thinking the last couple of weeks. So there's that too. But yeah, that's kind of how I've been. And I know part of it may be that I've been disconnected from the community a lot more the last month. Just a lot of stuff going on and not able to do what I need to do to stay fully immersed. And that makes it a little harder to, I feel like I lose my connection with my real self a little bit when I can't connect with you guys as much. So that's kind of where I am. Whit, are you next?
I believe so. Sorry, my partner was just telling me that Dandy's eating grass, and I was commenting that he always eats grass. So here we are, dogs. True ADHD. I forgot that the new moon was this week. Oops. But I realized that I had made, I just started writing to put in a community grimoire. But I made a connection oil on the new moon. And I was like, dang, I could have put it out and charged it in the new moon too, but it's got a lot of layers anyways. I used an oil from Bright and Dark, and then some of the herbs that we've gotten to. But my fancy name for it's connection oil to kind of hold that feeling signature of feeling connected. I specifically made it for my house spirit, to connect with them better, but thinking that I could actually use it for a few different things too. So I am being like a natural witch about it and made some fancy oil. So that is my unintentional new moon activity that I did. So yay. All right, Ezra, I believe you are next.
Yeah, so right now I'm actually like out of town visiting my partner's family, and the thing that keeps kind of coming up for me is like just how different it is over here than in like my corner of the world where I've like intentionally like been able to do um to make it more magical, and even with the people in my life that aren't like um super magical, do most of them do NVC at this point, or are like learning about and nonviolent communication. So that's been interesting. I've been doing a lot of holding space. A big thing that I have been focused on is every time that I see something, and this was part of my new moon stuff as well, but like is focusing on just rather than actually I've been working with judgment a lot the last like several weeks, but and so instead of judging people for like whatever my brain is considering like kind of like unsafe behavior, in a, you know, mostly in a violent communication context, just like little things that are like not connection fostering, I guess. I'm just like trying to mark those as like moments of discernment. And I'm just kind of like in my head, I'm like holding space for their need to do those things and their coping mechanisms. And then I'm going, no, thank you for me. Like in my head, like I'm just like, you know what? I see that. I understand it. I don't prefer that. So I'm trying to do that a lot because there's a lot, like, you know, there's a lot of fear right now, and kind of this just like there's fear in the people like it's a very political moment right now. And so there's fear in some people, and then the other people are kind of just like very careless. I don't know how to describe it, but there's like there's definitely a lot of violent communication going on. And so part of my new moon, I haven't been able to there's like not really candles or anything, but I did some bath magic. And I just try to connect with the moon and kind of like hold like a conversation in my head about uh what it is that I want to bring into my life, what I want it to look like. And the let's see. And I got to talk to, like my partner's dad's girlfriend is very witchy. And so she's so happy just whenever somebody comes in and is able to talk about things. So we always have really good conversations, even though like when I'm not here, like she's like the crazy one. So she's just like very, um, like, oh my gosh, yay, somebody to talk about this stuff with, which is very cute. So that was nice. And so I think it's just been kind of an opportunity to practice being around people that aren't very interested in connection forming, and finding the little like threads to follow to like show them what connection could look like. Like that kind of thing. It's been a lot of like practicing like almost these like micro there's like microaggressions, but these are like micro connections instead. And that's been very interesting. And I think that's been kind of the highlights of my new moon trip. I've also been doing a lot of manifestation art around like the journal prompts. And so I'm having a lot of time to do that. And of course, I also find it very, I find that resistance often inspires me to do art about what annoys me about what people are doing. So that really, ends up working in my favor. So, yeah, I think that's about it. Let's see who's next. I think Maria.
So the new moon and as well as this like July summer solstice has been, I try to use other words other than busy, but active, I'll say. It's very active. And I did something interesting. Well, interesting for me that I'm kind of processing. So I had a catalyst happen at work, and I was pretty triggered by it and emotional. And I said that I was to like my coworkers, which I don't know if I've ever really done it before in that way. Like when they were like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "No, I'm not." And usually I'm like in a work environment, I'd be like, "Yep, I'm fine," and just deal with it, but not like share that I wasn't okay with with work people. And it was interesting because like my boss and I had a little interesting conversation about it. Like, so this was like leading up to the full moon. And yeah, it was just interesting. It was interesting for me to kind of like be more vulnerable, and not like and break kind of the cycle what I normally would have done, which was be like, yeah, I'm fine and just like business as usual. I can no longer do business as usual. Like I don't like that mode for me has been interrupted, which I wanted it to be. Like, you know, like these things like happen and I realized like I just never took time to like process them, and you know the world just like goes on, and I understand like that happens, but it just in like a workspace I was like it was just interesting, so that was like coming up to it. And then you know, and then yeah, just we got this news that like we're taking on all these new like clients and all this stuff, and so my world's about to become like even busier. But yet everyone was like, how are you feeling? And I'm like, fine. I was like completely neutral about it. I'm like, whatever. You want me to we'll take 100 people, fine. Like, I don't know. I just wasn't, so that was interesting. So just kind of more like noticing my reactions to things and how like they're different from how they used to be. And then the one thing that I've been like missing, um, you know, I love doing what I do at Bright and Dark, but it is another job. And I don't like engage in my practice as much as I want to, and I don't even really know how I want to engage going forward, you know, like I'm kind of like feeling that out, you know, but what happens is when you like, you know, those of you that, you know, experience just a lot of like busyness, whether it's like family stuff or work stuff, you know, and then like I do that, you know, what is it? There's technical terms, like clinical terms, but you know, at nighttime, I'm like, I'm free, you know, like at 2 a.m., I'm like, I'm free. Like, and so I'm like watching TV and I'm like, you know, social media. And like, I love that time because I'm like, I feel, you know, I feel free, or what is it? I'm in like functional freeze or whatever they call it. I don't know, but probably that. And, so the new moon for me has kind of been like all of this busyness going on. Me kind of feeling like neutral about it, but then also like realizing that I'm, you know, obviously I'm engaged with I'm all up in the witchy stuff, but I'm up in all the business of it and not in my practice. And I just don't know. Like, I don't really even know what, but I know that I want something. That's always me. It's always like, can't quite put my finger on it until it's presented to me, and then I'm like, oh, that's it, yes. So anyhow, that's just like where I'm at, you know. And I am gonna be able to decompress a little on vacation in New Hampshire, where I go to the mountains, and it's a very the all I can tell you is like the air feels different there, and I feel different when I'm there. And it's like a time that I don't really go on my phone a lot and stuff like that. So I'm looking forward to kind of like feeling into this a little bit more. There will be like other people there, but I definitely will have some time alone. Um, and I'll be in like the river. And so we'll see. We'll see like what information I get about this. Yeah, this like the rest of the month. And ta-da, Renee.
Hi, everybody. Um, so what I've been doing is I've been working on my version of meditation, and it's actually working. And it's more about just like trying to bring my focus back to a goal than it is traditional meditation, I think, with a lot of help from suggestions from everyone here. And I think my kind of focus this month, I've just been trying to like, you know, be of service to my friends. And so yesterday, my best friend and I went to a salt cave, which is one of my most favorite things to do. And she just turns into, well, we both turned into little kids. And when they opened the door, we were both rolling around on the ground in the salt, like having way too much fun. But I was going to say too, when Stephanie mentioned when you just talk to other practitioners that come from like a Dominion angle, it is such a shock to the system. It is so um weirdly just I don't know, it seems so old fashioned to me at this point too. It's interesting, but um yeah, I mean, not too much exciting to report, except also my little guy, he's getting cataract surgery this month, so I'm very excited about that. So um yeah, and I have another kind of story, but I'll save that for another time later on. That has to do with one of my friends church hopping that you guys might all find very interesting. So I'm gonna mute right now. And Maria.
Oh, I'd love to hear your story. And yeah, when it's gonna, I feel like what, will be interesting, some maybe conversations that come up when we're engaging, with other people. And I feel like it's like you only know what you know, like unless like you go out and like search for something, but um like when I hear like Stephanie, when you had like that experience, and it's just like the first thing I think of is like, do they even know like that this other thing is like an option or available? Like, have they ever heard, of connection-based magic? And it is hard because some people um feel strongly about like the traditions of things, and I respect that, as well, but I'm not also that witch. So yeah, just find that really like interesting, and um yes, just find it interesting. So Renee, I think you had your hand up next.
Yeah, I was just gonna chime in. I don't really know what to do in that situation either, because what I usually end up saying to someone, especially if they're like really going off, like someone was going off on being like spiritual warriors, and I'm like, well, I'm like, the group I'm in practices connection-based magic. Um, and I don't really say more than that. Or I'll say like versus dominion-based magic. And you can kind of see people like look at you like, what? But I don't really feel qualified enough to speak on it. Yeah, I'd just be real curious to hear what other people like, how they would kind of, how they deal with that. Because I don't know how to, except to say like, I'm in a group and we don't do it that way, or like, or I'll say like, we practice connection based magic versus dominion based magic. But okay, Ezra. Oh wait, was Ocean next? Sorry, you guys. Yeah.
You're all good. I'm out of frame because Persephone is laying on the air vent. Um, so that's her spot now. I wanted to weigh in on the why people go directly to mimicking these old ways, because I did that too for a while when I first kind of got into magic. Um, and I was saying things to my witchy friends like blessed be and stuff, and I didn't know why though, or like so mote it be. I was like that just it at the time it resonated with me more than what I was doing before that point, which as somebody who was spiritual, and it's so funny, I was just thinking about this yesterday. I grew up like being so interested in just faith in general. I would go with my friends to like their church and stuff. And like, I remember one friend did not want to invite me back because I asked her pastor if he believed in ghosts. We had a whole conversation about it. And apparently that wasn't like, okay. Like she was literally like, she was like, they thought you were weird and this, and this. I was like, I don't know. I was just curious what he believed in. And, I was always just kind of interested in learning and stuff. And so when I came into witchy spaces for like the first time, with it was mostly just like online like Facebook groups and stuff, because when I like really came into my witchiness, it was during the pandemic pretty much. And so looking back at it now with the connection-based perspective that I have, it was like, I mean, I'm sure you understand this, but it's like a deep amount of like people pleasing, and that like it's like it's weird how we people please to try to belong somewhere. Like, it's not weird, it makes sense, but it's weird to me now because we can't authentically connect from a place of like masking. And it's so funny because looking back at that now too, my mask was trying to connect with somebody else's mask. And so like a lot of times when I've been in those spaces early on, I felt so deeply disconnected, no matter how hard I tried to connect to the other person or like take interest in the way that they were viewing things and stuff. And I did get to the point where I wanted to start challenging people's beliefs. And doing that is still kind of a struggle for me. I have come to accept that I have a sort of assertive personality. And so I haven't really sorry, it was about to like automatically mute me. It was like, are you done talking? I'm like, wait. So I have stuck because of understanding myself better. I've sort of stuck to asking questions about what other people believe. And then like kind of using the NVC to sort of like reflect back of like, okay, so this is what you believe based on what you just said, which it's just, and it's also a process of not taking responsibility for their feelings, which is really hard, especially when you're such an empathetic person. And I literally just posted a video in the Facebook group this morning that was talking about how like when you're high masking and you're highly like emotionally intelligent, you're essentially taking responsibility for like when you're using your mask to take responsibility for the emotions of the people in the room or the other person. Like you're and then when you're able to unmask and actually show up authentically, it looks like you're not like empathetic at all. When you're actually authentically empathizing, you're not giving those visual cues because you're not trying to take care of the other person's emotions. You are genuinely taking in the information and responding to it. And like interacting with it in order to connect with it, rather than just being like, yeah, like I know it's so cringy, like we all do it. I'm not even gonna like make fun of myself right now because I know that's gonna come off as like outward, but it doesn't feel good to connect from that place, definitely. So I can understand why it's hard to be in those spaces, especially now that a lot of us have like gone through this process of getting to know ourselves better. But sharing that inspires other people to understand themselves better too. And it's okay to make people uncomfortable because sometimes that helps them grow, as long as you're not like purposefully, like it's okay to let people be uncomfortable. That's a good way to put that. Okay, that is my 2 cents. Thanks. I think Ezra's next.
Yeah, I love that. It's that's actually very on point for what I'm experiencing here, because it reminded me of so like my mother out of law with my partner, like her mom, she at one point last time I was here, I tried to do NVC. And just by like saying like, so what I'm hearing is like that, like just doing empathetic listening, right? And she's so anti-connection that she was like, I know what you're doing and I want you to stop it. Literally, like like that kind of thing. And so it's been like a lot of the interactions we have, I am just like trying to listen. And every once in a while, I'll just put in a little bit of a reflective thing if it feels like she's like in a in a hearing mood or something. But for the most part, she doesn't really let anybody else talk. Like, and if they do, she's not listening, that kind of thing. And so that reminds me of this, like, dominion based, like, because I've actually joined a couple of different like Facebook groups and stuff recently, and have been like just putting my feelers out to see how other witches are doing things, which I hadn't really done a whole lot of before. And I agree that it's a little bit jarring sometimes, to see how that has come over, like the I guess lack of deconstruction type of stuff. What helps me though is just like modeling it instead of trying to like teach it. Like, instead of, like, somebody I think asked a question about and they asked a question about, like, if someone else was allowed to do some a ritual for them. It was like a cord cutting ritual, and a bunch of people in the comments were just like, no, you have to do it yourself or it doesn't work. And then there was all this stuff about, that kind of thing. And there was lots of you have to and stuff like that. And so I kind of brought it around to, like, I was just like, well, if you do it this way, like, I would take this into consideration and ask what this means to you and like that kind of stuff. And, and it got like a few like people that commented or liked it or whatever. And the people that resonate with that are the people that are ready to hear it. And so like just being yourself as a, non-dominion based, connection based witchcraft practitioner, then like you can show them what it's like. And anybody that is curious will be like, I always like what you have to say. I wonder why that is, like they'll be like, I feel good when you respond and not so good. Like they'll feel it come out of you and they'll be like, and the people that are meant for it will reach out because they're like, oh, hey, why does it not suck to interact with you like it sucks to interact with some people, and other people who don't feel safe in interacting in connection based ways, like they will not, they'll go to their section of the world where they feel safe. So and it made me think about too what happened on the new moon is that my partner's mom has been experiencing ghosts in her room. And she's very scared of them. Like she like lays there wide awake, like terrified. Right. And she hadn't been bringing that up. And then she did end up bringing it up and allowed me to like, to talk to her about it. And then like, I was very much working around like her beliefs around what ghosts were. And, like I definitely tiptoe when I'm in conversations with her, and see what she's ready to hear. But it ended up being a pretty good conversation. And, I don't know how much of it like actually resonated, but it felt good to have that moment of connection where she was actually willing to like be comforted and experience a idea of what ghosts are and like and what they're like they're not just like they're not like demonic entities that are trying to get you, possibly like just like presenting, hey, what if this is what they are instead, and that kind of thing. And so it it's one of those things that's like a slow going situation. But I think if I just try to, like Ocean said, show up authentically, my people will gravitate and the people that aren't, my people will go away, which is ultimately what I want anyway. So let's see who's next. Roxanne, I think.
It's Maria next. Thank you, Ezra.
It was on my list, I swear.
Thanks. I was thinking on about what Renee said too about like how do you respond? Like what do you say? And it's funny, like for me, so I started doing this thing with myself, and it's like uh so I say this and have this caveat where like I know that people are have like spent time researching and all the hours and experience. So I say that like knowing that I value like people that have done research and have experience. But how I kind of am choosing to like interact this little experiment that I'm doing is I I pretend that everybody knows nothing. So like I remove any hierarchy, which like so I go into experiences being like you don't know. And that goes for me, meaning I don't know either. Like nobody really knows. So I just said nobody really knows. Nobody really knows anything, right? I mean, that's what I think. But like we think and we, but like will I really? I don't think I'll really know what I really want to know until I leave this earthly plane, right? And then get some sort of and more information. But so I'm just kind of like navigating, right? And learning all these things and like having like the interactions, right? And so as it's like now letting go of the right and wrong, that's been hard for me. Like, and I don't like I there are times where I want to go into like violent communication. That doesn't mean like by violent communication, I don't mean like yelling, but just anything that's not like a non-violent communication is its way. Like, I find myself getting aggravated and I find myself getting like wanting to like debate and list the 5,000 reasons like why, they're wrong. Um, and I do find myself like as I continue on this journey too, like feeling more neutral and just feeling like, someone's got for someone like say it's like a political conversation and someone's telling me why Trump is like the best person in the world. And, I can just be like, okay, that's what you think, like have a nice day, rather than like getting like into it, which believe me, there's like a part of me like sometimes I do want to get into it. And sometimes I do, sometimes I do. But but anyhow, back to boop. So it's kind of like starting this vibe was like nobody really knows. And so like if someone says something and it like piques my interest or I feel excited about hearing it, or I feel like the opposite, I'm just kind of like using like that part of my like intuition and feeling into it of like what I want and like or what I want to engage with. But it's just an really interesting way because like I could be talking to like a priest or I could be talking to like an elder and I just be like, but you don't really know, you know? Um, and then same thing with me though, like if I say something and someone doesn't resonate and I'm like, that's okay, because I don't really know. Like I'm just giving you the best information I have in this moment at this time from my collective like experiences, right? And so yeah, there are some things that I feel in my bones that like I feel are so true. But I feel like it's just recognizing that other people don't and that like that's like okay. um and like I kind of it leads me also down that leads me down a like a side quest of morality, but that's for a different day. But I just know that like that kind of leads me down a side quest of morality. But we won't get into that because that's not what we're talking about. So back to Renee. When like it's interesting because it's funny. I will also feel that sometimes the same way. Like, can I really speak on this? Like, do I know enough information? And so I feel like it is just about like seeing what resonates, who like resonates with you, and then it ends up being like a conversation with someone that's like awesome, like that you're sharing. It's like an idea exchange, but that I kind of do like, I don't know if it's helpful. Like what I mentioned is like the key points and kind of what you said is like that we're connection based, and that there's no tradition, we're not practicing a tradition, and that anyone practicing any tradition can practice connection based magic, um and that like where it's a power kind of for all dynamic. So I get like people kind of into the mindset of like a power over all, and then like thinking like, oh, like a power for all, and just like maybe like seeing like those two different options, because so many of the dynamics in religion, as we know, but even in witchcraft, okay, like even in these spiritual practices, there's power over all dynamics. Okay, like Christianity took it from the pagans, like they learned it somewhere. It's okay, of course, like people, of course, like people get power hungry, and all of those types of things like perpetuate it. But like, I'm just saying like it, there's it just is. And so, kind of just seeing things in that way. And it's really more about like not even and just sharing your experience, like, and just saying, this is my experience. This is how it feels for me. And that's like kind of just what I do. I'm like, well, this is just what I'm doing. And then it takes away like also that hierarchy or that power of like me needing to be have read all these books or feel like I've needed to research or whatever. Like, no, like I'm confident in myself and what I, like my choices and like how I'm choosing to engage. And there are times where you know, that I do like think about it and pause of like, someone that's been practicing for, like 50 years, or that's been, um, like they were born into a coven, and, they do have these like really strict, traditions. I because I do know some people may think that like, what they do is like the right way and the way to do it, and what maybe we're doing is not. But that's like everything of opposite of what I want, right? Like I don't want anybody telling me what to do. I want to tell you what I want. And if you want to do that too, then let's do it. So it's like these sharing. So we're all doing what we feel is exciting to us, what we feel like we're loving to do. And, that's just how I want to interact in like the world. And I do feel like that perpetuates also so much change. Like when people feel empowered just to do that. And again, there's just like this morality thing that like pings me about like, well, what do we do about that? And how do we make sure we're not like all killing each other? Like, like we should talk about that. But, like, anyhow, I hope that was okay. And let's see who's next. Roxanne, you are next.
Yes. Oh my goodness. So I'm going to piggyback a little bit off Ezra and Maria, because definitely modeling, I have found, has been the best way to kind of communicate what connection-based magic is, and sharing with them your practice. I have not interacted with too much of other like groups of witches and stuff. Um, but what I have seen, some of it's kind of like, ooh, yeah, I don't know about that. And it's made me hesitant to do it. But definitely like getting out there and participating more is going to be important. And really that whole like taking what resonates with you and leaving the rest at the door. That's what I always encourage people, even if I'm talking about something. Because that's the best way we can find what works for us. And especially like not too long ago, I was thinking about how my practice is so eclectic. It's not based on any kind of tradition, and how that has been very freeing. So being able to model that for someone else may help them. They may feel more like closed off from everything. So that is kind of my approach on that. And lately I have been more in like spiritual communities who some people are witches, a lot of them are not. They come from different faiths and different walks of life and everything. And I have found that within that community, I have found more people practicing like connection based everything, that it's been very uplifting. And that is just exploring everything that's out there. Because within the witchcraft community, a lot of it has still have been underground. And so a lot of them are based in tradition, and there still is a lot of fear based within there, from having to be underground and coming from an underground community. So that's another thing with walking in and just knowing that no one knows anything, like Maria said, and just you don't either, and just being able to basically model for each other as well when you're with those different groups of people, because there is going to be stuff that definitely like that they share that resonates with you, but you'll have your own twist on it that will make it more of that connection based and will feel truer to you. So, and it gives you a way to show them a different way of doing something within their tradition. Um, yeah, I think that's all that I had. There was something else, but I can't remember. Ocean, you're next.
There we go. Okay, I wouldn't unmute. Yeah, I had more thoughts on the same subject. I don't know how to tie it in all pretty. I usually like to try to do that to like the last thing, but I so I took notes so I wouldn't forget, like super neurodivergent person. Anyway, so I'm not here to save anybody else is my first note, and I'm just gonna go off that because I wanted to tie it in, but it's like I it's like about how I was saying like not taking responsibility for other people's like emotions. It for me it's like a way of saying that like I'm allowed to be in the world, even if I'm not really of it. Like I am allowed to recognize that I'm having an experience too, and it's not just about how other people are perceiving me. Um, and then when I do want to connect, when I feel like comfortable like doing so, um, even if it's somebody that I'm not in like perfect agreement with, I try to find the connection points. I have a relative that we would constantly find like he was really good at finding ways to argue about things. And at one point, I remember a conversation where I ended up breaking down crying because I couldn't keep up with the argument and I was trying so hard to connect. And I realized I was connecting by arguing about it. But when I regulated and was able to like step back into that like conversation, I realized, oh, we just care really deeply about the same thing. Like we don't have to fight about it because we both are just caring a whole lot about the same thing. And that helped me to connect more deeply, even though, and like kind of just sidestep it altogether. And that's what I'm finding about these like these binaries that people are existing within. When you are able to like step, when I've been able to step outside of like the options and be like, well, what about this? Or like, what if we do both? Like sometimes it kind of just diffuses the whole thing. Not, not always, but a lot of times. And then also I kind of just let people do what they want to do. Like that just goes back into I'm not here to save anybody else. So if somebody else wants to be um wants to believe something that's hurting them, like even if they're upset about it, I've decided to let them be upset about it. But I think I kind of already like made that point. But I just really enjoy this conversation a whole lot. Go ahead, Ezra.
Um, when something that Maria said, I fully agree with you, Ocean, by the way, like, and that every once in a while during this trip, I've like come and before it as well, but like when I dig into my shadow work, it often comes back to like me wanting to be heroic and to save people. And so I'm like, oh, why do I want to do that? Like, what is that saying about like um who I uh who I want to be, and like what the work like, because I also believe that like we create our own reality in a way. What is that like having the universe do for me to try to meet that need to be a hero, like, and to like be altruistic and all of those things. And so I keep on coming back to that and being like, oh, okay, that's the hero, that's like the savior complex, got it, okay. Now I know where that need is coming from, and I can do something else more consciously. um but something that Maria said about like wanting to do violent communication, um the something that I have been like learning more and more about is, as I learn nonviolent communication, is when to use violent communication. And that is like a little bit, especially like in nonviolent communication specific circles, I think that they're a little bit less like willing to entertain that idea. However, one of the I was kind of describing again the experience with my mother-in-law. It's very topical for me right now. But like she and like she will only hear you sometimes if you like, she'll just nonchalantly say something very mean, right? And then I'm just like, sometimes I'll just reflect it back at her because it pissed me off. I'll just reflect it back. I'll basically say what she just said about somebody else to her. And she'll be like, whoa, what? Ow. Okay. Like, like she doesn't say that obviously, but it like rings into her head finally that was like a mean thing to say. Right. Because she's just unconsciously, doing and saying things all the time. And so when I explained that I like felt bad about this, because I was like, oh, I know better now because I know nonviolent communication, and I've been studying that for like a couple years now, and like and my like NVC mentor was just like, it sounds like you went to Rome and spoke Roman or whatever the Romans spoke. I don't know if they actually spoke Roman. Is that a language? I don't know. And so I was like, oh yeah, like I spoke her language. Like she doesn't speak this language, and I spoke it to her in a way that like that made a connection, right? Like, and so sometimes like the more I learn about NVC, the more nuance I'm able to apply to conversations in which it is not fully applicable. Like, and so like humor in and of itself, like I'm like I like comedy, and I even like took a like a class on comedy at some point, like at the beginning of COVID. And comedy inherently is about creating tension and then snapping it, which according to like the nonviolent communication rules is violent communication. And so sometimes though, people only will be able to hear you if you can make a joke about it, or if you can kind of meet their violent communication with a little bit of violent communication. And like, so it's not something that I like would promote like for everyone to like go ahead and just like do that. If you want, like obviously do whatever you want, but it's something that I'm, as somebody that really likes communication and like would love to have conversations where people can actually hear me. I have found that there are some people, if connection is really what I'm seeking, that what by the terms of nonviolent communication, different forms of communication that are not explicitly nonviolent communication they work better for that person. And to me, that is actually more important than like holding myself to the rules of this. And I can supplement it through nonviolent communication. But to me, the actual core of nonviolent communication, more so than any rule, is about being present with that other person and connecting to them, no matter, like, sometimes the connection is in violence and sometimes or in meanness or dominion, or however you want to put it, and that is the only connection that feels safe for them at that moment. And so it feels like an opportunity for me to like plant a little bit of a seed, and to show them kind of that, like, I don't think that I'm above them. Like, because that it does come across that way sometimes, of like this kind of like holier than thou, like, oh, well, what do you mean you value kindness? Like, okay, like that kind of thing. And so that struck me when Maria was talking as something that I needed to say, because it's been kind of swirling around in my mind. The more that I entrench myself in NVC, the more that like opportunities are reflected to me that are not within the confines of that language specifically. Like, I still think it's part of it, but yeah, okay. I think that's it. Let's see who's next. Is it Renee?
I think so.
Yes, Renee, you're next.
I just wanted to tell everybody first, I could tell my husband was taking a picture of me and I'm like, what are you doing? It was when Maria was talking and he's like, well, you're over there grinning ear to ear. So I thought that was kind of cute. I would share that. So one thing, I'm probably going to piggyback off a bunch of different things everyone has said, but I am a firm believer in, the more you learn, the less you know. And the more I learn and the more information I have, the less I feel that I know. And but I also feel really inspired, and I love like bunny trails and side quests. So I think that's really fun. And I think piggybacking off something Roxanne said, it is interesting when you hear about someone's practice in Dominion based magic, and you do just, or I should say, I kind of just go, oh, how can you do that connection based? Like because at this point, Dominion based magic feels it does not feel aligned. It does not feel like the right way for me to do things, for sure. And then I was just gonna mention something kind of, this is more about like a local culture I've observed, which is that not only do some people in my local area practice Dominion based magic, they have really weird like power flexes they do, like intentionally on other people, kind of as a test. And they're very aggressive. And one of my friends, I'll just say, she was at like a craft fair and she got approached by a bunch of witches, and one of them just picked up a bunch of stuff from her booth, and when she pulled out her kind of card reader to get a payment, the lady's like, oh, I'll just catch up with you later. And then every time she tried to kind of get payment, then she got gaslighted by this group, and they were like, well, you're making a big deal out of nothing, but the nothing to her was like her rent money. But then one of them in the group actually told her that it was like a weird flex to just establish dominance over her. So it's pretty wild. I mean, like I said, like kind of some of the local culture here, it goes beyond like their personal practice into really trying to have dominion over other magical practitioners, people that I avoid, obviously. And it is the mean girl dynamic, Petra. Oh my gosh, yeah. um but yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. If anybody has any advice, I mean, like I said, I won't I don't intend on engaging with it at all. And kind of what something Ezra said, which is I have a tendency to make a joke out of things, like when things get uncomfortable, or when that's actually kind of my way of shaming people, like shaming their bad behaviors. I'll just make like a joke about it. But yeah, it's interesting for sure. Stephanie.
Yeah, that mean girl dynamic is something, as a very bullied young child, was is very, very triggering to this day. And I'm sorry to hear that that's, I mean, it's still going on. I know I experience, and that's just, I'm sorry to hear that. But um, conversation is so great after my experience working with other witches this morning. And I had a long conversation about some of our experiences with the cousin that I went with. Um, and the things that aligned with and things that we really didn't. And I had a moment where it became apparent to me about how what a good growth experience this is for me to dip my toes into these other perspectives, because I got poked in shadows in all kinds of ways this morning. I was afraid, was I speaking out too much or asking too many questions or this or that? And it made me take um, a big look at my own perspectives as well as other people's, because I've spent some time here in bright and dark, and it's gotten quite comfortable for me. I align with so many people in here that it's much more comfortable in this space, and I don't want to live in a total echo chamber. So I am using these opportunities, and I'm in a safe space when I go to these other witchcraft things, as learning and growth opportunities for me as well, right? So I can be an example to others about the way that I practice connection-based magic, but learning their perspectives also helps show me where I still need more work, or the things that are coming up in that way that I can take a deeper look at. So while I didn't align with a lot of it, I thought it was still a really, really good experience for me. And I'm not sure if that helps at all, right? Those pokes are sometimes exactly what we need to um, show us what needs our attention in that time. So I think, Maria, I think you're up next. I could be wrong though, because my list shows different sometimes. So
Yep, Maria's next.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Stephanie, I resonate with that a lot. Like as much as like I notice a shift within myself, and then like being out in the world, and then like something really pokey happens, or I'm interacting with someone and they're not, like Ezra was saying, like they're not practicing connection at all. And yeah, it's super pokey, and it is like sometimes I laugh, not sometimes I get really aggravated, but sometimes I do like laugh, and I'm like, oh, like you think you've done all this work, like, well, here you go, like what are you going to do now? And I'm like, well, what am I going to do now? Like, how am I going to respond to this? Like, I have a kind of a choice. And then it's interesting because I often think, Stephanie, I've been thinking a lot about like the love and light conversation too that we had. And it's kind of like also, like if an interaction didn't go like I maybe if I didn't maybe feel authentic, or I didn't feel like I came from a place of connection, then it's kind of like not shaming myself either. And, sometimes that I do get into that, and, just remembering that like I'm human and I'm also like still learning. And so just giving myself like that compassion to, yeah, like it's hard sometimes. And I agree with you too. Like I do think it's really important to like see what's out there and kind of like do the thing, right? And like it's super interesting. I find it like super interesting. Um and one thing I wanted to share I forgot before is like when we're talking about like so yesterday I was on TikTok, and there's a medium that I follow. And so when I started like getting into my spirituality practice, like I think I mentioned before, like it was a lot of tarot, but like mediumship was as well. And so um where I kind of had like that sort of training, and there's an experience like medium that I follow, and she was talking about her beliefs on like spirits don't get trapped. And the comment section was like super interesting because people are like, well, I'm a medium, and yes they do. And watching her, she, I don't know if she's read nonviolent communication or like practice it, but she like, it felt like she did just from some of the ways that she responded. But that was like a really interesting like thread to, and I was really like reading it for almost like just being curious about like how these interactions were going, and on something that people feel so strongly about, like you know so yeah, that was just a super interesting, and just wanted to mention it. Thank you. Ezra.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, Renee, because while in my work with judgment, I wrote something out about like the place where I find my judgment coming up the most is in expressions that and actions, people that I consider unkind, or like careless, like mean, any of these words. And so I'm really glad you brought that up, because my brain immediately like came up with like so many different things that I want to say to this person. And the thing that like had to say about judgment was like um when I move from judgment to discernment and take the kind of morality out of it, and I just say, oh, I don't like that behavior. I'm like, I don't like that. That's not for me. Instead of kind of being like, because my immediate thought was just like, oh, what a bad person. Like what a bully. Like all of these things, like all, these, you know, uh names, which, are not like incorrect, like, but like what that tells me though is about my own uh need for like kindness, and my own um like how important it is for me to uh treat other people, uh I guess, in connection fostering ways. Like I could get, to treat other people what I think is well. And so like like my first thought was like I would go befriend the person who was getting bullied. Like immediately, right? Like that was like that I'd be like, oh, I see who is the person in this dynamic. I, like you, I would probably make a joke to point out that this was that was just bullying, like because she probably doesn't even think of it that way. um and she could possibly, or they could possibly be somebody who's just like, oh yeah, I guess if you want to call it that, like bullying. But most people think of themselves as a, they judge themselves as a good person. Like most people want to be seen as that. And they are like doing something so unconsciously that they don't even realize that they're being mean a lot of the time. And it's obviously like perpetuated by their group, that becomes a normal behavior in that group. And so they're not even seeing it as, something objectionable because no one's objecting to it. And so making like a little, like I would definitely make a joke about like, oh, we're playing Mean Girls here. Got it. Like that kind of thing. And then go talk to the person who was being bullied and like try to connect with that person. Because in my experience, obviously, like I'm sure a lot of people agree, but like, or have been there, but I've usually been on the bullied side. There was a brief stint in elementary school where I was a bully, but so I can see where it's all coming from and everything, and where like I wanted to. That was how I was making friends, right? Like was learning the dynamics. I was like, oh, there's an in group and an out group, and I clearly want to be in the in group. And if the in group is doing these mean things, then that's how you make friends. That's how you laugh at someone else, right? And so now that I see that, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's not for me. Got it. And then I would go over to the other person to kind of like extend. But yeah, I probably would tell a joke about it, even if it was mean. Like I usually feel really good about that. So, like that's my highest excitement that I'm gonna follow is making fun of bullies, I guess. The because I don't know, like there's definitely a part of me that is just like I think meeting people's energy, as much as I love nonviolent communication, I think that for some people, the best learning experience is their own medicine. If that like I don't know if I'm just sounding like mean, but that's definitely how I feel about it sometimes. And so because it seems to me that's all they know. So like in a way I feel like I'm connecting with them, which I think I went into that a little bit. So it's like, oh, you think that's funny, so you've told me what you think is funny, right? And now I've shown you what it means, like when I use your humor against you. How does it feel? And some people, like, it's weird, but some people are like, oh my gosh, we can be friends now. Like, so like they really are not even registering it that as a, like an objectionable thing. They're doing it as like a test to see if you can hang, if you can be like, because I've had people ask me to be meaner to them. like that, like very open, which is pretty candid. Most people don't ask outright like that. But I've had like they're just like, be meaner. Like I can't handle all of this like nice bullshit. Like and some people have even been like traumatized by niceness, like this, like, or like, even so that even like kindness comes off as like unsafe to them. And so if I have to interact with these people, like they're not somebody that I usually like go out and seek or volunteer my time because I'm not interested in them being in my reality. If they're, you know, if they only feel safe around violence and meanness. But if I have to be around them, that's usually what I do is I make fun of them, because something else I learned in my comedy class is that the opposite of fear is humor. And which is why like at the same time that like Hitler was like in power, there were so many like comedy shows about like defacing Hitler, right? Everyone was like terrified. Same thing with like the whole like Trump, and then like I don't know if anyone's seen like all the art about that's like making fun of like him and Biden, like there's a very like there it's diffusing something there. And ultimately what I'm afraid that I'm going to be treated badly by those mean girls, or that somebody that I care about is going to be treated badly by those people. So I think that it's, oh, sorry. There's actually something else that came up when you were talking about, I have been trying to connect with the elements, and specifically about fire, right? Like that was the one that I was having the most resistance to because it felt mean. Like it felt burny, right? And when I was thinking about how I would react to a bully in that situation or any other situation, I've been trying not to moralize it so much as say, this person did a thing, the natural response is this thing. So like you put fuel on a fire, you can't complain that the fire gets bigger. Like that, it's not doing that to be mean, it's just responding naturally. And I think for me, the natural response to seeing someone get bullied is to like make a joke, defend, or otherwise defend that person in a way that might be seen as like mean or violent or whatever it is. And that's just a natural consequence in my mind of that action. It's not because I think they're terrible or because I think I'm amazing. It's just like that. It feels like just like an if-then statement. And when it feels more like an if-then statement, and I take that morality out of it, it does just feel like, oh, I'm choosing to do what I prefer. And they're choosing to do what they prefer. They prefer to live in a meaner world. I don't. And so I don't know, that's just how I've been thinking about judgment. And it's interesting that I my brain connected that back to my fire workings. So I think that's it. But I really like this conversation. It's very fun. So thank you for bringing it up because it's very topical. And I think Renee's just back.
So I was gonna say, like, I don't know if this is some of my shadow work I need to work on, but if someone is mean to me, I generally don't care. Like, I usually will just laugh about it because if I don't like know them or respect their opinion, I'm just kind of like I don't know why you'd think I'd care about that, you know? But if someone is mean to one of my friends, then I will get vicious. And I don't really know if that is like if there's shadow work for that. Like I don't know. It's yeah, I'll get real defensive about that. But just when you were talking, Ezra, it made me think of my sister and I, we were talking about our flatliners moment. So, if anyone ever saw the movie Flatliners, it's like a sci-fi movie where they actually medical students, they temporarily kill each other and then when they're in that moment of death, they relive like the worst thing they ever did, or like if they did some really harsh bullying or anything like that. And like my flatliners moment was in junior high school in like 7th grade. There was this girl that I'd known since elementary school. I'm gonna call her H. And in elementary school, she was just really hard to. I mean, now it's pretty obvious to me that she had a lot of, she's very neurodivergent, but I remember we were in like the locker room in 7th grade. So we're like 12 or 13. So I try to like give myself a break now. But these much physically bigger, older girls were like snapping her with towels and like really physically picking on her. And I just remember sitting on the bench, like willing myself to do something, like going, do something, do something, do something, say something, stop this from happening. And I couldn't make myself do it because I was like, then you're going to be the target. And I have like a lot of you know, like I said, that's like my flatliners moment. Like I feel so bad that I didn't intervene, but at the same time, I'm like, well, I was 12, you know, or 13. And so I try to give myself a break, but it is just I think, you know, after that, I just told myself, I'm like, I'm never just gonna sit back and watch something bad happen to someone ever again. Like, you know, um, I don't know if I got off topic there, but Petra, I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Aw. I just wanted to, if it's okay, Renee, I just wanted to like give you some reassurance that like whatever
Yes.
response that your body chose in that moment was a survival response. And as someone who has also been bullied by 12-year-old girls, I can assure you that that is a survival response. I was, it's very funny to me as a human being because the majority of other people who have been socialized to perform femininity have like freeze fawn responses in those kinds of situations. I am an anomaly and I am so painfully aware of this that I have such a visceral and almost like knee-jerk fight response in any situation where I feel threatened. I used to call myself, before I understood trauma responses, I used to call myself a puffer fish. But I was like a human puffer fish. It's like somebody like scares me and I'm just like, roar. Like I just like get big, get loud, get like aggressive. And I'm like 5'2". So it's just like, I think it's also that proportionality. It's like I've been little my entire life. And so the only way to like not get picked on was to scare the shit out of the people trying to scare the shit out of me. And so that means that I have a very sharp tongue and that I also am very scrappy. I used to beat people up in elementary school. I would never start fights. I just finished them. That's my thing where I'm like, I don't feel bad. If you decided to open this door and you found what you didn't like behind it, that's not my fault. But I think that the thing is that like that is not the typical response from any, and especially like with girls. Like I think that was something that being autistic I actually had to learn as I got older, was like you're not allowed to hit other girls. And so you have to like play along or just like whatever. And that was where, when we're talking about humor, that's where like things like that came in, where I would say something really snide and really sharp in those situations. And that also is an anomaly because I'm hyperverbal as an autistic, which is not like I just get to be all weird and unique and like do all these things very, very differently from people. But what I wanted to say was kind of like I love this conversation. I think it's so fascinating. I put a few things in the chat just about kind of communication in general. I think that the thing to remember in any given situation is that most people are navigating the world from their most wounded parts. That is kind of like the thing that I've experienced. And once you realize that like people who are being mean are just running around and are like terrified little 3, 4, 5, 6-year-olds in big kid bodies hurting other people so that they don't get hurt first, because that's all they know. Like that's the only way that that little part of themselves has ever learned to receive safety. It helped me. I think I realized that actually as a teenager. I didn't have the language for that, but I was just like, weird, this is the part of pattern recognition and being wildly autistic and feral that you're like, oh, like I think this is how this works. And people are just like sad and scared on the inside, which I have been told before that I'm like, I had a friend be like, you're brutal in a fight. And I was like, why? And she was like, because you say the things that you're not supposed to say out loud. And I was like, which is like autism, like autism. Hello. So like, what? But I would, when people would say really mean things, I would just immediately be like, wow, you must be in so much pain, is like the first thing that I would say to people when they would say horrible things. And that just like throws people into shutdown and freeze. They're like, the fuck? How dare you see me so violently? And so I also wanted to say that like learning about trauma responses and realizing that like my go-to kind of strategies for dealing with conflict actually were utilizing people's like shutdown, collapse, and freeze response. Like I was triggering the fuck out of people, to be very clear, to get them to leave me alone. And I didn't realize that was what was happening. Was like, because when someone is used to operating in this kind of unconscious way, and then you just rip the roof off of their thing, their body has, the only option they have to do is like, oh my God, back away slowly. This is so dangerous. So I don't recommend it because I don't think it's particularly kind, but it's very effective. And I wanted to echo what Maria was talking about with, because when we were talking, there's so many things that happened, and I was just listening the whole time, and I was like, I love this conversation so much. Was about kind of this interacting with people who perform and practice things differently than you. And I think what Maria said was like, it has been my strategy for a really long time. Was I realized, because of pattern recognition, that when I told people you, or also when people told me like, hey, you need to whatever, I was like, my oppositional PDA self was like, the fuck I do, don't tell me what to do. And so I was like, well, if I don't like this, and I'm sure other people don't. And so I was like, okay, how do I get around this? 1 second. Recovering from strep throat. It was only viral. I didn't need antibiotics. That was great. But the way around that is to talk about your own lived experience, because truthfully, even if you activate somebody or you push on some of their buttons, like, what are you going to do? Argue with me about how I've lived my own life? Like, are you the expert in what I've done? Absolutely not. And that has happened to me before, where people are like, that hasn't happened to you, or and I was just like, and my response is always like, I'm sorry, were you there? And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay, then you don't know. You can tell me that you don't believe me. You can say like, I don't believe you, or you think that I'm a fucking liar. That's fine. I don't give shit. I know I'm not lying. But like, you don't actually get to argue with like my lived reality and the things that I've actually experienced. Like, you don't have to like them. And I think that that's often the thing, is also when there's dissent with shared new information, usually it's because you're bumping into people's cognitive dissonance, and you've like met their capacity for learning. Their body is like, this is a threat, I can't do this. And my go-to strategy for that, whenever I'm sharing new information, is to tell people, I think you guys have seen me do it here, that like, you're welcome to tell me to fuck off. Because that's saying, I welcome your anger, I welcome your resistance, I welcome that boundary of like, fuck no. Like, that is welcome here. Like, you don't have to accept what I have to say. Like, I'm gonna share my shit, and it's gonna like do whatever. And if it isn't something that feels safe for you, don't take it in. That's fine. And when you do that, you give people's room to breathe, because so much of our society, because it's rooted in oppression and domination and control, is about like putting ideas in people's heads, forcing things down people's throats, never giving people enough space to breathe, to think, to know, to think for themselves, right? And so I think that it's really like, these conversations that we're having about conversations and about communication are actually really important, because they help us understand and kind of like deconstruct all of that piece of like all the ways that we are like forced to believe things. And like, it's so funny when, I don't know who's talking about it, about, I can't remember now, someone being like, about people being like in a magical group and being like, you should do it this way, or you shouldn't do it that way, or the cord cutting thing. I don't remember. Anyway, my brain was like, you need to figure out who it is. And I'm like, nope, this is just a sidetrack. Let's stay on task, please. And my own body's visceral response to like the shoulding, I was just like, ugh! Like, I want to run away from that. That's just no. And I think that is not the norm of how people are communicated with. So I really also agree with what Ezra was saying, where it's like, when you show up in these spaces and model this behavior differently, and you show like, hey, there's a different option besides shooting all over each other. You can actually just be like, this is what I do. What do you do? I'm curious about that. Let's communicate. Help me understand you. Okay, I don't totally agree with that, but like, why do you do it that way? Like, why does that make sense to you? Because it doesn't make sense to me, but like, it clearly does to you, and I want to understand you. Like, when you center connection in communication, even when you don't understand, even when you disagree. It's like inherently generative and reparative. Does that make sense? It like brings people together, because we're touching on this thing about society right now, which is that like we've been conditioned in society that agreement is safety, right? Homogeny, we have to be the same for us to be safe. Now that's rooted in white supremacy, that's rooted in colonialism, that's rooted in racism, like that's rooted in all of those things, right? Which basically says anything that makes you closer to a cis white older man with property makes you safe, which is only been, I really hesitate to use this word, but like true, air quotes, hard air quotes, because it's not true. For several hundred years, maybe. And for the majority of human history, the things that have kept us safe as a social species are being connected to other people and learning how to solve conflict, right? Is like, do you think that a kin group of 150 people had no conflicts? Obviously, you stick 150 people anywhere and there's going to be fighting. Duh. That's how that works. We do not get along all the time with that many people. It's just impossible. And the other piece of that is that like the absence of conflict is not peace. It's not safety. The absence of conflict actually is a lack of intimacy. It makes relationships incredibly fragile. Like if we couldn't disagree with each other here, like it's nice that often we're all on a very similar wavelength. I think that's lovely. But I also have seen in this space where like we've had dissent, we've disagreed about things, and that's incredibly important. Incredibly important. And so I think that that's the other piece, is that like realizing that like someone's ability to disagree with you is acutely tied to their ability to be intimate with you. Like if someone can't disagree with you, they cannot be safe or close to you, and vice versa. Like if you can't, even I've disagreed with my own past self where I'm like, nope, we don't believe that anymore. We're changing this. Like, let's like edit, like we'll file that in past things, and that we're not bringing that forward, you know? And so I think that that's the thing, is that we allow people the space, and ourselves, because we've learned to do it for ourselves first, the space to like be messy and to disagree and to believe in things that are like, whew, that's like, you know, maybe not the safest thing, but it's like, hey, I see this person's humanity in this, and that's more important than me being right. And that's something that I've always come down to. I remember having this discussion with a friend of my husband's about like vaccines and stuff. This was long before COVID. And him being like, I just like, you know, basically showing people up. And I was like, that is very much how you have been socialized as a man. Yep. And I was like, so my thing is that I refuse to like lose control of my, like, not control isn't the right word, but like I refuse to become dysregulated just because of a disagreement. Because for me, the minute I lose that, then I don't have a place to teach from. And to me, when I'm having a conversation with somebody I disagree with, is always an opportunity for me to learn and for them to learn. And if I lose those things, then what is the point of having this conversation with this person at all? Like, if there's no learning, then there's nothing there for me. Like, I'm learning, like, I'm a voracious learner. We all know this. So I think that those were just the things I wanted to share, and I want to make sure that there's time for Roxanne. And I don't know if Ezra also has their hand up, but thank you, team. Bye.
Ezra is next.
I love that, Petra. The what that brought up for me when you were talking about, like, I was also like this like short, I'm 5'3", and so like this like short person who was like defending other people. Like Renee said, it's a lot easier to defend other people because I don't care enough for like it became a defense mechanism for me to like not care about what bullies said, and it worked. Like bullies do not target me for very long because I have, you know, like I also was like had the privilege of having like a parent who gave me a lot of self-esteem, which a lot of people don't have. And so I always, like, I once said to a friend, where it was just like, aren't you, they were like, they said something like, aren't you worried that like this person won't like you? And I was just like, well, I was like, it only bothers me if it's based on something that's like not true, because then my need for truth to be like, it suddenly like comes out. And then but I'm like, but if it's true and they don't like me out of something that's like real, I love me. So like they're wrong. Like essentially like, no, I don't believe that they're wrong anymore, but it's just like, good. I'm glad that they don't like, that there's something about me that they're just like so against that they don't want to be around me, because I've thought through all the things like that I think that I know about myself. And I'm like, and if they'd hate them so like something about me so much, like then they need to go over there, and that saves me time. They've like figured it out. But something about like the being short, because there's like this trope of like, I don't know if anybody responded in the comments, but like the fierce short person trope too, like it was always like a big thing for me growing up, and people would like, like people were always a lot more obsessed with my height than I was. And it kind of became just like a thing that they constantly talked about. And that was annoying. And so, of course, because I was annoyed by that, they'd be like, oh, ha, ha, see, like you've got a like short complex or something like that. I'm like, I'm fine with it. You're the one that seems to be obsessed with the fact that I'm short. But it also made me think there was a time of like, um, when I was like learning about like epigenetics and kind of like also like the history of like how little people have been treated and stuff like that throughout like throughout everything. And I was like, short people probably like epigenetically, the short people who survived were the ones that were fierce about it. Like 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 for real, like as a size hierarchy, that is one of the things that physically exists. Like there were people that didn't mess with me because because I was so unfazed, or because I was so like verbally like Petra said, like, so I was so good at verbally defending myself that this person was just like, whoa, if that's the thing, like Petra said, like I would say the thing you're not supposed to say, like like, because I also learned when I was a kid that like the reason that people are bullying, like my mom would say, like I would actually befriend bullies sometimes, because I was just like, don't you want to do this differently? Like you seem to be coming up to me a lot. Would you rather be friends? This is how I do friendship, like that kind of thing. And it would work sometimes. But then like I would say things like, wow, like does like who treats you that way, like does your mom treat you that way or something like that, and they like they would immediately like like why are you saying the thing that you're not supposed to say. And I think that that's one of the reasons nonviolent communication appeals to me so much, is because I could be so mean like because of the way I was like raised. Like I could be so mean because I can see like people's like weak point a lot of the time, and I'm not really seeing it as a weak point. I'm seeing it as like, oh, let's address this so we can be friends. But that person, because they're acting like almost everything they're doing is out of this, this wound, they are immediately like, holy shit, that like Petra said, that's completely unsafe to do that. So yeah, that I think that's all I had to say about it. But I was pretty much just commenting all the things that you guys brought up. So I think Roxanne is going to wrap us up probably.
Yes, I am. So this has been, of course, another amazing discussion. I've loved hearing everybody's insights on everything we've had to discuss today. And since today is the 7th, we have Sacred Space that's actually following this immediately in about 5 minutes. So if there's anything, one last little thing anyone wants to share, anything else, just pause for a second. Anybody? Okay. Well, I will see y'all hopefully either in Sacred Space or SAS. And I think that's all we have this week, maybe. I'm not good with announcements and stuff. So I hope everyone has a wonderful day and we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.